welcome Kris Smith, lead community banking lending solutions from BDC, and Booker Cornea, market lead commercial banking from the First Nations Bank of Canada, to talk about an exciting partnership from the First Nations Bank of Canada to introduce FNBC's new business acquisition loan for Indigenous communities. Let's give them both a warm welcome.
Me and Booker are both fairly tall, so I'm going to have to raise that a bit. So first of all, thank you very much for allowing me some of your time and welcoming me to this conference. I've really appreciated it. I've learned a lot as well. So myself, I'm call it a co-lead for community banking with Business Development Bank. What does that mean? I'm kind of the solution design person and a risk person for this new initiative that we've launched. So what is community banking that we've launched? It's actually about this partnership that we're about to launch. This is a good example of what community banking is and what it's intent to do. So at BDC, we have salespeople that can go to direct clients, and we've done that for years. But what we've learned, though, is partnerships like with First Nations Bank of Canada, they have great relationships within their communities. And what we're trying to do is leverage them and give them more ammunition to do better, more flexible deals that they've done before to reach communities, to in this case, to acquire more businesses. So Booker here is going to do the presentation, but what we're doing essentially is a loan guarantee to help Booker structure more deals with his clients. So thank you. And Booker, over to you.
Thank you, Kris. I am the second tallest person on the stage, I think, at this event, thanks to your premiere. Logan, I'm a little worried. You were in the hospital. You were breathing really close to my space just a couple seconds ago. I'm going to find out a little more. Can I get on an airplane later? I would just like to say thank you to the Sanaimo Nation for hosting us here. What an amazing, beautiful part of the country this is. I also want to acknowledge and thank Dallas for putting on such an amazing event. And also to Sarah, Melissa, Logan, Izzy, the team at C3. Ultimately, Dallas looks really good, but I think anybody that's been involved in something like this knows that it's those people behind Dallas that make him look so good. So I just want to just give a round of applause to that team. They've done an incredible job, and this is a premier event across Canada. I go to a lot of events, and this is one of the best run that I've been to. I'm Booker Cornea. I'm a Cree Métis man visiting from Treaty 4, and I'm here representing First Nations Bank of Canada. Getting a little close to lunch, I want to make sure that the people in this room that need to be paying attention are paying attention. So who here, show of hands, is representing a nation or a nation-owned business or ECDEV company? Yeah, I'm quite a few hands. That's good for me. You guys need to pay attention to this. This is going to be a new tool in your toolkit. I would arguably say maybe one of the most revolutionary ones that's happened in the last decade or so. So everybody else, you got phones, TikTok, and you do what you need to do, but I think we can, for the others, I think we can really, this is going to be worthwhile. So before I get going on the program, if you're not familiar with First Nations Bank, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about that. But if you're with a nation group like that, simply put, we're your chartered bank. We're your bank. We're owned by 82 nations across Canada. We are Canada's only Indigenous-owned chartered bank, and we are the only one that exclusively serves the Indigenous market. We serve over 15,000 customers across the nation. Approximately 65% of our staff are Indigenous, and our ownership is about 88% Indigenous. The other 12% is TD Bank, who helped get us started. Who here in the room either has met or been in the same room with Bill Lomax, our CEO? If you were here last year, you saw Bill. He was up on this stage. He's Gitxsan, so he's from BC. He lives with his family in Vancouver. There's quite a few hands up. Now, Everybody here, who here by show of hands has been in the same room as a CEO from a big bank? Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 5 people, I think. I think that should say something to you. I think that really, like, it's important, and I think it just shows the difference of who we are. All the big banks have Indigenous lending divisions now, but Indigenous lending ultimately makes up a percent of what they do. For us, it's basically all we do. It's our entire reason to exist. So when you're supporting us, when you're working with First Nations Bank of Canada, you're supporting 82 nations across Canada. So a little bit about our history. Next year, First Nations Bank is going to be 30 years old. During that time, we've been kind of viewed as that little bank that could. We've grown, but grown by about 10% year over year. I think that slow and steady growth is going to be changing quite quickly. A big part of that reason is just what's happening in this room. As Dallas mentioned earlier, 20 years ago, 9 out of 10 times, what was an economic development project on a nation 20 years ago? It was a gas station. That's not what economic development means to First Nations anymore. Just in the last couple days, I've talked to people about, it's just massive nation building infrastructure type projects, Indigenous equity ownership in resource projects, hotels, casinos, airlines, private surgical centers. There's not an area of the economy that nations aren't participating in. And that's, nations are our clients. They're pulling us along with them with that growth. So it's pretty exciting times. The other big driver of growth in our organization is we can do some things that the other banks can't. We have a partnership with Canada Infrastructure Bank that you may have heard of that allows us to lend you directly their money alongside ours. So if a nation's putting a shovel in the ground, working with First Nations Bank can literally save you millions. We can lend you up to 20 million or a portion of that lending on a new project at a rate of 1%. And that's just something you can't get anywhere else. And the other project, the other aspect is the program we're talking about today. So let's talk about, here we're a national bank. There's just a shot of some of our branches and locations across Canada. And right now, about a fifth, 1 in 5 nations in Canada work with First Nations Bank. So the opportunity. Currently, over 60% of businesses in Canada are owned by baby boomers, and the average age is about 55 years old. Almost 20% of those businesses are owned by people that are 65 years or older. Right now, 76% of all business owners in Canada plan to sell their business in the next 10 years. And less than 10% of those individuals actually have a plan or a succession plan on how they're going to do it. So those businesses represent a transfer of assets of over $2 trillion. This is a generational opportunity and change that's happening. And I don't think there's any other group in Canada that's more poised to take advantage of this than the ones in this room, First Nations themselves. So why buy a business? Why buy an existing business and not just start our own? Right now, statistics show that over 80% of business startups fail within the first 10 years. While established businesses that transition to new ownership, they have existing cash flows, they're proven, they have a failure rate of less than 20%. So just right off the bat, buying a business versus starting your own, you're over 4 times more likely that you're going to be successful. That makes for a much better investment opportunity and safer. The challenge, why aren't nations buying more businesses? There's a lot of reasons, but those primarily come down to access to capital. Nations have, just not a finite source. So despite when you go into the market, some groups just think of nations as just having, just giant trusts and they just have tons of money to spend. That's not always the case. And certainly not true across all nations. So access to capital is important, and competing priorities for that capital. If you're a nation, if you're an dev group within a nation and you have a business opportunity and you're going to speak with somebody and you're going to have to pull $2, $3, $4, $5 million out to acquire a business, chances are you have housing needs, chances are you have social needs, some pretty important things that capital also is needed. And so making that decision to invest in your future beside, instead of taking care of just present issues is a challenging one. And capacity is the other thing. Not every nation has the capacity to run a multi-million-dollar business. So, that sometimes it just might seem a little intimidating. So the other really challenging program is business acquisitions are often asset light. Business acquisitions are often part of the value of what the asking price is based on a multiplier of EBITDA. So it's not uncommon for a business to be for sale for $5 or $10 million, but less than half of that is actually in hard assets. And the rest is what they call goodwill. Banks don't finance goodwill terribly well traditionally, so that can make it difficult. So the solution, our partnership with BDC, the business acquisition loan for Indigenous communities. So with the support of BDC, First Nations Bank is now able to offer financing for these acquisitions at up to 100% financing. So that means that a business can, be acquired without pulling a dollar out of the nation's pocket, which is game-changing. That's a very significant thing. Initially, we have BDC's provided a pool of $100 million of loan guarantees to help support those opportunities. And the target deal size is going to be in that $2 to $10 million range. BDC is bringing the expertise. This is what they do, business acquisitions and transition planning. And we are bringing the expertise of knowing First Nations, knowing Indigenous communities better than any other FI in Canada. This partnership is allowing for greater access to capital and opportunities with a structure that's tailored for the realities of First Nations and Indigenous communities. So BDC is supporting, First Nations Bank is leading, ensuring this program is Indigenous-led and community-driven. So who's available for this? This is a community-based program. So this is for nations and nation-owned dev entities. This unfortunately isn't available to entrepreneurs or individual-owned businesses, but First Nation, Inuit, and Métis communities, this program's for you. The requirements, your nation or community has to be purchasing a controlling interest in a business, so at least 51% or more of an existing business. And outside of that, this is pretty wide open. We're restricted from working in areas where BDC just can't work from a legislative perspective. So, gambling is one that's restricted, retail sales of alcohol, cannabis. But outside of that, most industries are open and could be, utilized with this program. So just a brief example of a sample deal. So your community wants to buy, let's say it's a grocery store, serves your community, the existing owner wants to sell, but it's important for your community. Been around for 15 years, for sale for $8 million, but you go do a building appraisal, it's only worth $5 million. Generates consistent revenue. Most financial institutions are going to look at that $5 million, what the building's worth, and you're going to say, we'll lend 75% of that asset. So your equity to purchase that $8 million business would typically be over $4 million, just about half of what the business is for sale at. With this new program, potentially we can lend you 100%. So you can make that acquisition, zero to pocket, not pulling anything away from your community, and just getting to work right away. So that's what's exciting for me about this program, is that it really just changes the equation. I know there's a lot of groups out there that are looking at opportunities, but it's the equity, pulling it away from somewhere else, that's the challenge. This changes that dramatically. So groups that haven't been shopping for business acquisitions and wouldn't normally, with this tool available to you, you should be. There's tons of opportunity out there. If capacity is the challenge, businesses are for sale. Often the management can go with it. There may be opportunities to bring management along as a minority shareholder, or setting up contracts to, tie in the management as part of the deal, or, transferring capacity through part of the acquisition agreement in terms of, training somebody from the nation to run that business. But these opportunities solve a lot of those challenges and problems. So this is the opportunity for nations to grow own source revenue. And own source revenue is it's the key for nations. It's you can't really talk about independence and when all of your money is tied to a government agency telling you what you can do with it. So this is the opportunity to grow some of those own source revenue streams. Intergenerational wealth, investment, this is a nation building program. So I do have 3 minutes left, it looks like. Happy to answer any questions, or if there are any. Get some loans started. Oh. So what were some of the challenges in designing the initiative? Well, the challenges were, given our position as a senior debt lender, working with doing this type of lending with a lack of security, how we're governed and regulated with capital, without BDC's loan guarantee, this wouldn't be possible. Even if a bank wanted to do this type of lending at this type of rate, it's challenging. That's why it doesn't exist out there. We do very good lending to nations, and we've got a great track record. We've never had a substantial credit loss in our history. I wish I could say it's because Booker's such an amazing lender and I make good decisions. That's true, but just nations are good groups to lend to. They pay their bills ultimately. So the other part of it was just working through the process with our partners at BDC. They were great partners. They were very eager to get this done. BDC, this is what reconciliation looks like. BDC doesn't have a big place working with Indigenous communities. They wanted to expand that. They wanted to learn in this area, and they were eager to do so. So this is BDC's way of participating in reconciliation and making a difference. So where do I foresee this initiative going in the next 5 years? I think this is going to be wildly successful. I think this initiative is going to, that first 100 million, I think this is going to go like that. I think groups that weren't shopping for business acquisitions, once they have an understanding of this program, I think they're going to be in the market. I'm hoping our partners, I think they're going to see that. I think they want to do good things. Once we have some good stories to tell, I anticipate and hope that this is going to be expanded. We've met with the CEO at BDC. She certainly indicated that that's the desire to expand and grow this program. So, first things first, let's get some dollars in capital, let's change some lives, let's make some great things happen, and then we'll go from there. But there's certainly the will. So, cost of capital, that's a great question. So this, the financing here, because of BDC's guarantee, is low risk to us. So there's a cost to that guarantee, but overall, this is going to be relatively inexpensive financing. Venture capital would be your all other source traditionally, 15, 20%. I don't see any of this financing hitting 10% total cost of borrowing, and I can see a lot of it hitting quite a bit under that. So it's going to be risk rated based on the deal. There might be something, some groups that are, quite a bit lower. That could be 6 or 7 potentially. There could be some deals that are 8 or 9, but we're not talking financing in the teens. And Logan's here, so I think I'm going to have to miss the rest of those questions, but thank you very much. I'm around for a little bit, but I'm catching a flight soon, but I would be happy to talk to anybody that is curious about this program, and but you can find me on LinkedIn. I can drop a card, and we're ready to go with this program. We're ready to get moving as soon as you are. So, thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Booker and Kris, for that fantastic presentation. I owe you that. Thank you. We're going to roll into our final keynote speech before the lunch today. It is my pleasure to welcome Michelle Carr, CEO and Commissioner of the BC Energy Regulator, to deliver a keynote address. Michelle, as many of you know, has extensive experience in regulatory oversight, industry, and government relations. She was previously the Assistant Deputy Minister at the Ministry of Energy, Mines and Low Carbon Innovation, accountable for the LNG Canada facility and associated Coastal GasLink pipeline, the largest private sector investment in Canadian history, among many other projects. Please join me in a warm welcome for Michelle.
everybody. Thanks for joining this keynote speech, and thank you for inviting me to join you today on the territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation. And I also want to acknowledge and show respect for many of you who've traveled from other territories and shared your experiences and knowledge with us. I'm really honored to be part of this conference, particularly as we move into National Indigenous Peoples Day tomorrow. Now, while some of you may have experience working with the BC Energy Regulator, we will be new to others, and the BC Energy Regulator is certainly new to the renewable space. And I understand that there have been questions, including about the potential expansion of our mandate and the implications that that might have on First Nations rights more broadly. And where government and the Premier yesterday have been clear about the need for urgency in supporting projects, they've been equally clear that this must not come at the expense of the environment or interests of First Nations. I truly believe that reconciliation is key to our success as a regulator. Today I'm going to talk you through our approach, how we approach project reviews and permitting, how we develop the frameworks for the industries that we regulate, and how we weave reconciliation into all aspects of our work. The BC Energy Regulator has a long-established track record of regulatory excellence. Our one-window project-based approach and oversight of the life of a project enables us to regulate both expeditiously and respectfully of First Nations and environmental standards. As a life cycle regulator, we ensure safe and responsible energy resource activity management for British Columbia, from pre-planning to restoration for natural gas, oil, LNG, carbon capture, geothermal, hydrogen, ammonia, methanol, and soon to be transmission lines and renewables. Through our work, we strive to achieve our vision of a resilient energy future where BC energy resource activities are safe, environmentally leading, and socially responsible. The BC Energy Regulator collaborates with First Nations throughout the regulatory life cycle, including regulation development, environmental and engagement guidance, compliance and monitoring, and restoration. And while the specifics of projects will differ, our approach focused on safety, the environment, and reconciliation remains the same. I'm going to first speak about the different ways that we engage with First Nations. When we are regulating a project in a nation's territory, we seek to establish a meaningful and long-lasting relationship. And in my time as commissioner, I've had the privilege to get to know the chiefs of many nations in our province, particularly the Treaty 8 nations in the Northeast. I've developed an understanding and an appreciation of the different communities, the histories, and the important connection to land. And I encourage strong connections between our organizations and nations across the province. And it's my hope when my organization works with your communities that are here today, you will find it to be a respectful dialogue that seeks to understand your interests, views, and concerns about activities in your territory. And our commitment to reconciliation is deeper than simply integrating it into our processes. We've been working to build reconciliation into our workplace culture. This ranges from attending cultural events such as Doig Days that I had the opportunity to participate in a second time last month, gathering to watch the film The Chaco yesterday in anticipation of National Indigenous Peoples Days, and through wearing our beautiful pin that was made by Bankhead Beaters and is mounted on moose hide, and for me provides a daily connection of the importance of our work and nations. So going back to our life cycle oversight, I want to provide a few tangible examples that demonstrate how we work. As we deliver on our mandate as a regulator, we work directly with First Nations. This begins at the stage of designing our regulatory framework, where we consult with nations to understand their views on our policy objectives and how we propose to go about achieving them. And when we receive applications from industry to undertake an activity, we engage in a process that enables a nation to participate in decision-making around that project. That includes providing technical and financial support to lands offices, meaningful review to understand the potential effects, including co-developing measures to address those concerns, joint compliance and enforcement inspections, and collaborating on monitoring. I'll provide two examples. We issued requirements for industry pre-engagement with nations that was co-developed with nations, ensuring that their interests are addressed before a project walks in our door. Recently, in fact, earlier this week, we issued updated requirements that were based on feedback and lessons learned from both nations and industry, ensuring that we have that responsive guidance in place. And during operations, we work with nations on compliance oversight in their territories. Across the Salish Sea here in Squamish Nation's territory, we have an interagency compliance agreement with Squamish Nation and the Environmental Assessment Office to ensure that we are effectively overseeing the wood fiber LNG project taking place in Squamish Nation's territory. Now, it's true, our work with nations has evolved over time, and it hasn't always been smooth. While we've transformed our approaches, we know we need to continue to focus and learn so that we are coming into projects and our regulatory oversight with an open mind and a desire to understand and ensure that we are making regulatory decisions that respect nations. I'm going to touch on how we work with companies or industry, also known as proponents, fancy word that people in my family wonder what I'm talking about. Many in this room will know what that word means. Proponents can expect us to bring a flexible and nimble and responsive approach. And I'll use our recent mandate expansion to take on hydrogen to talk about that. After our mandate was expanded in 2022, the team at the BC Energy Regulator worked with hydrogen proponents to understand their needs, their immediate needs, and to ensure that our technical regulations that we developed for the sector were effective, appropriate to the scale of impact, and where possible, incorporated national and international standards. This collaborative process allowed us to familiarize proponents with the BC Energy Regulator and our processes and build responsive regulations, providing the necessary oversight for this emerging industry to operate quickly and safely. And we would bring forward such innovations in our approach to renewables. Now, since the province's announcement about our expanded mandate in renewables and transmission lines, I've fielded a lot of questions around what does being a single window regulator actually mean? The single window allows us to essentially step into the shoes of multiple provincial natural resource ministries to authorize a range of activities based on a single process. When we talk about streamlining, what we are doing is taking 5, 6, 7+ provincial ministries and agencies, each of which would be approaching individually the impacted nations to understand the potential effects of the project on their particular piece of regulatory oversight. What we're doing is putting that into a single process that considers the big picture. So streamlining for us means efficiency while maintaining high standards. Unique in Canada, our regulatory process enables us to provide authorizations under our legislation, the Energy Resource Activities Act, as well as several other pieces of provincial legislation, including the Environmental Management Act, the Forest Act, the Land Act, the Heritage Conservation Act, and the Water Sustainability Act. For the projects that we regulate and the authorizations that we issue, the BC Energy Regulator conducts the Crown's duty to consult and ensures that is properly met. What this means is that First Nations, proponents, communities, all have one agency to engage with rather than separate. And in exercising these authorities, we work to achieve high standards for environmental protection and work with First Nations to ensure that their interests are met. So from a nation's point of view, for a project regulated by my organization, you will work with a single team in an integrated process rather than engaging and hearing from multiple provincial agencies, each looking to undertake their own process. In addition, our board of directors has regulation-making authority, and we heard from one of our board members this morning, the amazing Sharon Singh, that allows us to establish technical standards and adopt standards by reference for the activities that we regulate, providing clarity of expectations for projects and streamlining the permitting process. In exercising these regulation-making powers, we create opportunities to work with First Nations, industry, and communities to ensure that our regulatory framework reflects the needs, interests, and concerns of those who may be impacted and those carrying out activities. And to give you a real-world example, I want to look at a recently completed project in the Northeast. And I can't see if Brendan is still here, but I want to talk about ARC Resources, who recently brought phase 1 of its Hitachi project online. This was a $750 million fully electrified project that opened up a new production area and included wells, pipelines, facilities, water recycling, gas processing, and power transmission lines. Our single window approach enabled ARC Resources to submit applications to us on the range of permits that they would need for their project. This included well and facility permits, securing the rights of way on Crown land, power lines, water licenses, stream crossing authorizations, archaeology, and waste discharge approvals, among others. ARC Resources worked with the BC Energy Regulator through a single process rather than submitting permits to multiple ministries. We also had broad discussions with First Nations about the project as a whole, identifying the linkages between the different parts of the project and particular values. This resulted in an innovative work between ARC Resources, Halfway River First Nations, and the BC Energy Regulator to manage cumulative effects and minimize the impact of the development on key wildlife values of interest to Halfway River. And it was awesome to go and stand there and take a look at the specific mitigation measures that were there and built towards that. Hitachi was built on time, on budget, in a way that met the province's environmental goals and responded directly to the interests of Halfway River First Nation. Now, my aim in providing this example to you is to paint the picture of how our single window approach supports efficiencies in the permitting process and allows us to work with First Nations to understand how their interests are impacted by the project in a holistic way. All involved look at the issues and the requirements for the whole project in a single process versus multiple concurrent permit applications and consultation processes carried out by multiple ministries. And while I've discussed our single window, equally important to us is our life cycle oversight. When we say we are a life cycle regulator, we mean it. We work to build a constructive partnership with nations and proponents during the full operations of a project. Life cycle means we regulate from early site selection through pre-planning, construction, operations, and end of life. And we will meet early with nations to identify interests. We conduct audits, safety oversight, compliance and enforcement during construction, and we have a robust program for regulating and restoring sites when they are no longer needed for energy development. We are leaders in restoration, we're very proud of that, and supporting First Nations-led restoration programs for legacy disturbances. And last year, we were so honored to receive an early succession award at the Healing the Land Conference from Soto First Nations for our long-standing dedication to restoration. Now, I've talked a little bit, the focus of the discussion so far has been kind of those technical elements of what we regulate, but I want to talk about how in terms of the organization. We are experts in safety and in regulating environmentally sensitive and technically complex projects. We rely on approximately 320 professionals that work in our office, and that includes First Nation engagement specialists, as well as what I call our ologists, our agrologists, biologists, archaeologists, hydrologists, as well as engineers, inspectors, and regulatory specialists who work to fulfill our legislative purpose. These professionals work in 7 offices across the province, the largest of which is in Fort St. John, and they serve to regulate energy resource activities in a manner that protects public safety and the environment, supports meaningful reconciliation with Indigenous peoples and the transition to low-carbon energy, conserves energy resources, and fosters a sound economy and social well-being. We are an organization with a strong organizational culture of being nimble problem solvers, and we've been able to retain and attract very talented, sought-after employees who participate in everything from national standards associations. We provide leadership and regulatory innovation, and they're active in their communities. And if there's a gap in any of our expertise, we're able to fill it. And to get ready to regulate renewable energy and transmission lines, we've established a cross-organizational team that is leveraging our expertise and looking at everything from how we're going to be drafting technical regulations, our consultation and engagement approach on those regulations, and how we're going to engage with permitting. We are developing a phased strategy to ensure we have the right staff with the right skills and the knowledge to develop and deliver a robust regulatory framework for the renewable energy sector. And we are developing our cost recovery model based on our industry-funded model. In conclusion, because I know we're just about at lunch, I am someone who has been a regulator of several industries, and I know that a change in regulator can cause uncertainty and introduce risk to projects. I'm personally passionate about regulatory effectiveness, as seen from many of the conversations I've had over the past day and a half. And if there's one item I hope that you take from the short introduction to the BC Energy Regulator, is that we are ready to contribute to the positive development and work with First Nations to ensure we are achieving our goals for energy security and reconciliation. I'm super excited to continue to work with those of you I'm working with now and to meet many of you in the months and years to come, as well as for you to work with our great team. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for that fantastic keynote, and what a great way to close off our core program. We're going to break for a very short break until 12:55 when we come back for our closing keynote luncheon featuring MLA Aaliyah Warbis, MLA for Chilliwack Cultus Lake, and also House Leader for the BC Conservative Caucus. In the meantime, everybody please go network, go to the trade show. If you can help us clear the room for a few minutes, we'll set the tables and get ready for lunch. Thank you so much.